Outside of Notre Dame Stadium, I'm Tim Priester with Tim O'Malley and John Brice, and this is Irish Illustrated. It's instant analysis. Gentlemen, we had a whole bunch of people to talk to today. Defensive backs coach Mike Mickens, of course, special teams coach and safeties coach Marty Biagi, and all the accompanying players that go with them. Guys, take it away, because I think we got a whole bunch of good stuff to talk about.
I met the who I did not know until today is the most confident player on Notre Dame's football team, and that is Carson Hobbs. He's also confident in a friendly way. He's always smiling, but asked where he finished in the testing among Notre Dame's players. He said, top 1% for sure. And we said, can we ask other people that? He said, they all know it. And then he mentioned he's the fastest player on the team. And I asked him, what about number 4 on the other side? And he goes, no. So Carson Hobbs is a good tester. Let's hope he can play some corner the same way.
Let's
because
hope
he was fun to talk to, but it was an interesting conversation.
JB,
Man, I thought I had a bunch of good interviews today, and O'Malley just dunked on me. So not as entertaining, but Leonard Moore was awesome and spent several minutes with him. He and me, Drew Mintock, had a table to ourselves with Leonard Moore for a long time. And he told me, I said, look, you were a true freshman. You played the longest game in the history of college football. How long did it take your body to recover and you to recover? And he goes, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm used to doing stuff. So after we had about 10 days off, I was like, enough of this. What can I do? And he said he reached out to his trainer back home and got a personal training regimen to help himself get better in the offseason. Then he went to Mickens and said, okay, coach, how can you help me get better? I asked Mickens about that. He said he absolutely did that. He's a true pro. Mickens called him a pro multiple times. Leonard Moore telling me he's really happy to be up to 194 pounds. And I said, you looking forward to jamming even more guys at the line? He said, they're going to have to go through me. So that's a really good quote. It just pales once O'Malley opens with Carson Hobbs.
Well, Leonard Moore, he said, and Mickens echoed it, he wanted to work on his slant defense, and that's where that extra 194 will come into play. I chose to speak to Christian Gray today, and because I wanted to go over, you think about the highs and lows of a football season. The highs of a third and short stop in the first series against USC, then some real difficulties the rest of that game until the 99-yard return, and then, of course, the great play to essentially set up the game-winning field goal against Penn State, and then Ohio State, the last play to Jeremiah Smith. So, I asked him what it was like going through all that, and he says you just have to, and this is something that we've heard Christian Gray say before, you just have to tell yourself that you're the best. I'm the best. I'm going to bounce back. Nothing's going to stop me. And that's been his mindset. So a very difficult situation for him to deal with against, after the Ohio State game in the locker room. We talked about that a little bit. And he said he was asked a dumb question, and his teammates came to his defense.
I talked to Gray a little bit after you did, actually, and I asked him about the transition because I think people forget he opened last spring as a boundary cornerback behind Benjamin Morris. And I said, what was that change like? He said, I wanted to start. So I said, I want to play field because Benjamin Morrison was the starting boundary. He worked at field in the spring. He said it took him all spring and all fall camp because there's so many things that go on at the field level where you have guys running different routes. You have to know all the zone coverages of everybody around you. And at boundary, it's not the same. He said he has now grown as a field cornerback, but it is simply not an easy transition. And we talked a little bit about Leonard Moore having to play one game of that at Louisville. He's like, yeah, Leonard balled out, but I don't think he liked it too much. So Leonard Moore will remain at boundary, Christian Gray at field, and I did ask. Carson Hobbs is working at field corner and nickel this spring. So there's some good battles going on there.
Yeah.
Interesting conversation. You were around Luke Telich, were you not? Here's a guy who comes from Cody, Wyoming, small town. He talked about representing the small communities in the country, along with a guy like Jack Kaiser, obviously, who we saw today. But he talked about his interception return against Florida State, and it's a line he used before. He said he kind of blacked out the whole experience. He switched the football to the wrong arm, returning it to the end zone. But, it's a whole new ballgame for him, and he's got a great chance to be the starter opposite of Don Schuler.
And I spent time asking multiple people about him today, including Leonard Moore and Mike Mickens. And the thing that always comes up, and somebody else told me this last Saturday, communication. He communicates really well on the back end, so I got to ask Luke about that. And he referenced, obviously, his time as a high school quarterback and having to be vocal in that regard. He said, now look, let's be clear here. Wyoming football is a little bit different than Notre Dame football, and I feigned ignorance and didn't know what he was talking about. But he is a full 6'4", maybe a little bit taller than 6'4", up to 217. He likes that weight. He wants to keep that weight. He said he would not seek to go any higher than 220, but he feels the communication is going really well back there. He said, I absolutely know everything I'm supposed to do on every play. I'm getting there for the rest of the secondary, and I'm even starting to learn what the linebackers and the D-line are supposed to do on any given play. So a lot of dedication there for Luke Talich. Tay Johnson was asked if he preferred safety or corner and whether he was working at both, and he said he definitely prefers safety.
Well, Talich has a good teacher back there with him, Don Schuler lined up, and I thought it was interesting to hear Don Schuler about, he's talking about, I want to be a student of the game. I'm focusing on all my weak points. I don't want to have any down games. To avoid some of the ups and downs. And he said, what I did last year is not enough. And so, I think he, obviously that's the right frame of mind. And when we talk about juniors that are in a leadership role, I think Don Schuler is one of those.
Yeah, and it's, I in my mind, he dropped off a little last year. Then I went back and looked at the stats, and he did not. So that was, he was a pretty consistent player all the way through. Maybe he just stopped scoring touchdowns is why I thought he dropped off last year. But obviously there's steps to take because Xavier Watts was the quarterback there. I'm sure Xavier Watts covered up a lot of things we don't know about. That's why veteran players are needed in secondary. So Don Schuler has to take that step. That was his first year playing. I mean, he missed a lot of the spring the previous season. That was his first blush, and he was a breakout college football player if you consider he was the starting safety on one
from
of the two
game
best,
one.
One of the two best. Yeah, from game one on, the first pick of the year, one of the best defenses in the country. So I expect big steps from Schuler. I did talk to James Rendell. He was the only specialist to come up, and I asked him frankly, you were a lot better at one point in the middle of the year than you were at the beginning. He goes, I think you can cut a line in the halfway of the season. He said, you just have to be out there. I wasn't totally comfortable with all the game day procedures and everything that has to go on. I settled in. I feel much better. And I asked him, look, man, I know some of this is luck, but I don't think there has ever been a Notre Dame punter in the history of the program. I went back to 1980, and then I can't go back any farther, that didn't have a touchback. And James Rendell didn't have a touchback. Now, it's going to bounce in against Miami because I said that at this point, but that was a weapon last year. Nobody wants to talk about that because they just didn't enjoy James Rendell's first month.
Yeah, and teams were not able to return punts against him. And I know it's unorthodox, and we as United States football followers aren't accustomed to that. But the fact of the matter is he didn't kick the ball in the end zone, and teams couldn't return the football against him. So his net punting was – he averaged just under 42 yards a punt, which isn't great.
He did mention he could lengthen it. He just feels more comfortable. He can lengthen it now.
Yeah, and along those same lines, I asked Marty Biagi specifically. I said, James Rendell is a better punter every day of this spring because he does what? Every day that you come out to work with him. And he said, because he's consistent in his approach to everything that we're asking him to do. He said, look, we'd put him in as many situations as we could, but the guy truly didn't know what it was to be in a major college football stadium until he walked onto the field at Texas A&M. And he said, and then the dimensions are such, the stadium's different. He said, he really didn't know what he was walking into, but he said, now we ask him to do things. We ask him certain techniques. He focuses on those techniques. He is far more consistent striking the ball and in his approach. They were really enthused about that. And then along the specialist line, I talked to Marty about Noah Burnett and his addition, and he said to the casual eye, what fans will love to see is really solid ball striking and great rotation on the ball, basically saying he kicks a really pretty ball right now, and he's getting there where he needs to be with getting his form all the way back and getting his leg strength all the way back.
We saw him a couple weeks ago, and that's exactly what we saw. The ball really shoots off his foot. I don't know if he uses more the front part of his foot as to why the ball shoots off the way it does, but it definitely does. Wrapping up with Marty Biagi, I asked him if he had, has he picked up any new candidates for special teams since last year? And I think he made a great point. He said, you look at the depth that Notre Dame has at linebacker, the depth they have at defensive end, and at running back. The special teams coach gets an opportunity to tap into that.
And James Rendell, to wrap up, by the way, he does not know the fifth tool, I don't think. He was able to name 4 of the tools, but that's a season-long joke, I think, since Marcus Freeman called him a 5-tool punter. James Rendell just talked about versatility was something they were able to start to use as he became accustomed to college ball. On the special teams note, I think it's only tight end where they don't have a lot of depth yet because Cooper Flanagan, Eli Raridan, Larson, Bauman, that's enough tight ends, and Ty Washington, that's enough tight ends to have depth. You don't want Eli Raridan on special teams. Cooper Flanagan's not available on special teams, so the other 3 guys are going to have to pull their weight quite a bit, and I'm sure they will. I know Bauman will be heavily involved in that, but tight end is an underrated special teams position because those are your kickoff blockers. Those are your blockers on some other teams as well. I think they're set at there are a lot of linebackers. They're going to have a million corners and safeties if everybody stays going into the season.
You think they're going to use Jason Onia there again? Because that's a big blocker
that's
there
a big,
for the punter.
cone blocker. Yeah.
Good shield, right?
No doubt. That's it today for Irish Illustrated's Instant Analysis.